everybody, and welcome to High School OT. We have another edition of the High School OT webinar series presented by Bojangles tonight. Several coaches from across the state of North Carolina, basketball coaches, because we were talking about basketball recruiting, how it's been affected by the pandemic, and where it goes from here in terms of the future. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panelists. Next to me on the screen, I believe, we have Scott Taylor of Myers Park. Scott, how are you doing tonight?
Good. Thanks for having me, Kyle. Looking forward to it, seeing everybody.
Absolutely. Chris Davis of Millbrook. Chris, how you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. LJ Hepp of Holly Springs.
Yeah. Hey, Cal. Thanks for having us.
And last but not least, Brett Queen of Hoggard from out there in the coast. Brett, how are you doing tonight?
Doing good. Glad to be here.
All right. Well, thank you all again for joining. I know it's a really busy week for you guys with kind of the tip-off, so to speak, of basketball season, tryouts, practices, workouts, some tough decisions you're all having to make in terms of your rosters. So thank you for taking the time out of your schedules. I want to kind of just start with a general overview of kind of where you're all at with your programs and seasons before we delve into the recruiting stuff, because this is an unprecedented time, and I think a lot of people are really curious about kind of what it's like on your end with, the new restrictions, the shortened season, and just the regulations that have been put in place, kind of what you guys all make of that and how you think it'll affect the year. Scott, why don't we start with you?
So we essentially had our first practice today after making varsity cuts, still trying to work through some JV stuff. So we counted it as practice number one. But even though we have more time before our first real game, we have a scrimmage next Saturday. So we're trying to count down to a live opponent in a matter of 9 practices or something like that, without a ton of a preseason. So again, it was nice to get guys in the gym in the fall, but we were really trying to be cognizant of pods and numbers, not playing a lot of live contact basketball, which is often difficult for our sport. So it feels like we're trying to catch up a little bit. It was nice to be a little bit more normal and have a more consistent practice. The restrictions, obviously we're wearing a mask, practicing in masks, coaching in them. And honestly, for us, once you kind of got past the initial kind of shock of it being different, it really hasn't changed a ton, I don't think, in our gym. Trying to get kids to maybe be a little bit louder with their voice, but that's always a concern whether they have a mask or not. Mm-hmm. But yeah, figuring out how to breathe with it and condition and kind of pushing some of that. But again, I think that would have been an issue either way, just with the limited amount of time we've had with them in the fall. So beginning to feel a little bit more normal. Usually it's November 1st. Today it's December 12th or December 9th, but I'll take it. I'm glad we were in the gym today.
Absolutely. Chris, how about you?
I think you started out first about the recruiting thing. I think it was kind of weird, when things shut down in March. Just trying to help these, help first of all help our 2020 kids through the whole process of helping them find places to go to school, and then just dealing with all the Zoom calls and things as far as the kids that we had that were being recruited, and trying to get all that stuff navigated, and just to the point now, just the workouts like Scott was saying, just dealing with pods and numbers, and in Wake County we weren't able to start until October 19th. So just getting used to having kids around and making sure your time and check-ins, and just making sure that your thermometers work, and that you're doing all the health stuff to make sure everybody's in a good place, but then just making sure that the thing that we can't control is what they do when they're not with us. And I feel like that was the thing that I was kind of most afraid of, was like what would happen if they have a job, or they were going off and playing other places. So just asking them to be as safe, just being as conscious as possible was the biggest thing for us. And we're still cutting. We're still in tryouts right now. This is day 3 for us. Especially with this, I want to try to give the kids more time, because I've seen them play defense for the first time on Monday. Yeah. So you can tell some of these kids haven't played defense in a long time. So just trying to get them, in a certain way, thing. And JV, just being blessed to have 14 games, being able to play, having a season. I told my kids, for us to be able to do that, if we got to wear masks, we're wearing masks. We got to wear helmets, we're wearing helmet. Whatever it takes for us to play, we want to do. But I'm just thankful that we're actually able to do this, and I'm just hopeful that we're going to do our part as basketball coaches and mentors of kids, that we keep this thing going so the other sports get a chance to go too.
Brett, how are things in Wilmington so far? You've been at it a little longer than some of these guys.
Yeah, we were very fortunate that our county allowed us to get started back right after the 4th of July. So, it's different just because, we started out, we couldn't share a ball, so you're putting a kid at a goal by himself. And, then we were able to start sharing equipment. But, just a lot of, shooting and ball handling for 6 months. So it's been great, the last 3 days to actually have them be able to do some stuff. But, with the way things have gone this year, to me, this year is just about, being thankful every opportunity that you get to be in the gym with the guys doing stuff. And, it is unrealistic to think that, we're going to have every practice and every game and every kid's going to make it through without having any issues. And so just, being thankful to be in there and have the opportunity for the guys to at least have something that's normal, during the course of their day, because other than the fact that we're wearing masks, which our guys about, they haven't complained about it. And, it's taken some getting used to, but, it's probably the most normal part of their daily routine right now. And so just thankful for any opportunities that we get, but it's been fun to be back in there and be practicing. It's fun to have all the guys at one time. We were talking a little bit earlier about, other sports and football, and, I've had as many as 10 varsity players that played football, and so it's been kind of nice to have everybody out there at one time, going through the tryout process and learning things at the beginning.
LJ, and how about you? How is it to have the Hawks back in the nest?
Yeah, so certainly, I mean, I echo, Coach Taylor, Coach Davis, Coach Queen have said just about, the gratitude to have the opportunity for the kids to be there, because there's just, in our county, that our high school students have not been in the building yet. So we had our first workout, and one of our JV coach, was encouraging the guys to be vocal. And, we just had to kind of remind ourselves that this is the first time that, these freshmen have even been in the building as a Holly Springs High School student. So just trying to be, mindful of what they're going through and trying to adjust and adapt to give them the best opportunity experience possible. We're going to keep more kids than I ever have before, really just out of grace and just kind of a gift to give kids some socialization and Coach Taylor mentioned the normalcy. I mean, just to try to give them some of that. So we're trying to adjust with it, but certainly with everything they said with the safety and all that. But yeah, we're just excited to get going. We're super thankful for these kids to be with us.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into the recruiting aspect of it. All of you have had kids go from your program to college programs recently. I want to start with Brett at Hoggard. Sebastian Hydera, a recent graduate, 2020 graduate for you. He's headed to Central Carolina Community, I believe. What was that process like? Because I understand he was kind of a late decision there, and it kind of really heated up kind of when the pandemic was getting going.
Yeah, there was a lot of uncertainty at that point as to, whether teams were going to have seasons and, when seasons were going to take place. And, there was so much misinformation out there. And so it was really important to make sure that we were communicating with the right people. And what happens, unfortunately, in the world today is there are so many different voices inside these kids' heads, and they're telling them things that aren't always true. And so one of the things that I had to do through that process is just to make sure that I was getting Sebastian the correct information about stuff, because there were some there were some other schools that had begun to reach out, and a lot of it was, just trying to navigate, like, what's the best situation for you to be in next season. And, when you look at, the financial side of things and location and, as a parent, where am I sending my kid, during a pandemic, that element played into it as well, because we had some places that were not close that were interested as well, or starting to express some interest. So, just trying to make sure that we had all the accurate information. And at one point, somebody told him that, Central Carolina wasn't going to field a team next year. And so, he calls me in a panic about that. And, so I got in touch with the coach, and the coach assured me that, yeah, this is what's going to happen, and this is how it's going to happen. And so, it's just, I think that's an important thing at any time, to make sure that your players are getting the correct, accurate information. But it was even more important, during the spring when all this stuff started.
Yeah, absolutely. LJ, you had two guys on your roster last year that really stood out as college prospects. Caleb Scott was a senior. He was wrapped up before all this happened. And Dante Keisenhofer was a junior, rising senior, or current senior, I suppose, this year. How did their two situations differ? Because they're only a year apart, but that recruiting process for them happens in such different times. How did you kind of differ in terms of the advice and guidance you gave them as their coach?
Yeah, so Caleb coming off, so Caleb was 2020, like you said, and Dante 2021. Caleb had about 10 offers coming really out of that high school season into that early summer. And with Caleb, he was injured that summer before his senior year, so he would have probably had more choices had he been healthy June and July. But with him, I think a typical advice for someone like him who has offers, who has a lot of good offers, is play through the summer. Don't really get caught up in the recruiting process that much yet. Play through June, play through July. Let's see the first week of August who wants you, who's trying to set up a visit early for you to come see campus in early September or late August, and really see who wants you and wait to see, and then make choice in the fall. That's kind of a more of a standard timeline path. Dante started so Caleb ended up choosing in the fall and signing last November. Mm-hmm. With Dante, as his offers started to pile up early, like May and into early June, that's when some of the real uncertainty with what is AU going to look like. I think at that point July was pretty much off the table. There were rumors that hopefully maybe there'd be some sort of an AAU something in September, October. We were hopeful we'd have a high school season at that point, but we didn't know. And so he had gotten an offer from Wofford that he and his family just thought was a really nice fit for him. And so as we had talked about it, we started to look at what the circumstances are in the future and not being sure, and said, well, hey, if this, what boxes does Wofford not check for you? What would be a significantly better situation for you than Wofford? If you guys are this high on it for these all these reasons, then you might want to pull the trigger. And something that happens probably too often in recruiting is kids have a bunch of offers, but they don't realize that those schools have offered a handful of other guys at their position also. And then when one of those other kids commits, like, your offer's gone, right? So I said to him, Dante, what if somebody in your position called Wofford tomorrow and said they're taking it, and they call you the next day and say, hey man, sorry, we can't. So those conversations, because of it, sped it up, no question. And I think it was the right thing for him. I think it is a great fit for him. But no question that COVID has changed that timeline.
Chris, Millbrook has become a factory for college basketball, it seems, in recent years.
No.
28, I believe, players in the last 5 years. You've got the Chris Clemens jerseys behind you with the Houston Rockets now. So you've had a lot of experience in guiding guys, both as an assistant and now as a head coach in the last several years. How did the process kind of change for you when all this began? Because you had some guys in 2020, in 2019, and then a guy like Eric Vanderheiden in 2021 who quickly became like a top prospect almost overnight in the winter.
Yeah, luckily for us, we've got Evan Westa. I mean, to be honest with you, it was like maybe November, December of 19, and he was like, I want to put together like a recruiting like database to send out to schools, and basically it had GPA, had game film on it, had entrant, what AAU team or they played for or used to play for, with just different things. So we kind of had that together, and then we added, throughout the season through all the kids that played for us. So when everything shut down, we were able to send that out to the schools that were interested in our kids. So the 2020 kids were able to benefit from it. The 2021 kids were able to benefit from it. And they literally just started like calling and say, hey, I heard about this kid. We sent them the information. And then it was like, oh, wow. Okay. Thank you. All of it was in one place. I got a lot of credit for it, but believe me, it wasn't me. It was not. It was something he thought of that was a great idea, and the schools liked having access to it. And then they got a chance to learn what the high school, the NFHS network was. A lot of them didn't know that the games were there. They could actually go back and see them on demand. Mm-hmm. And then that helped. I think that helped too, that we had our games that way so people could see them. And then it was a bunch of Zoom calls. Like it was interesting. Like you could see some of the schools were getting used to doing a Zoom call. Some were really, really prepared. Some weren't as much, and it was all different levels. I dealt with, with like a Bradley Williams kid. We ended up going to play at Belmont Abbey, like dealing with that over dealing with like Nolan had already committed to New Mexico, had already signed. He was good to go, but still dealing with those people and then having the stuff with Eric. I mean, it was dealing with just, day after day, just different situations. But I made it a point to be a part of every Zoom call. I mean, we're home summer. I couldn't do anything else. So yeah. I felt like as much as I could be a part of it, I would. And then, I would maybe meet with the family before or after to kind of say what you thought, what you liked. And they said, look, because Eric wanted to kind of wait and go through the summer and have a summer and play and then kind of make a decision and visit some campuses. And I was like, hey, that's probably not going to happen. Yeah. So you're going to have to the best of your ability, make a decision. And then kind of like what LJ said, they're offering a lot of people, and if you wait and that scholarship is gone, that might have been the place for you, or a place you wanted to go to. And I went back to when I used to coach travel basketball. I had a kid that was right at the beginning of his junior year, he got offered by a school, and he just slow played it. And I was like, man, that's a great offer. I think you probably should seriously look at it. That school offered about 5 or 6 more kids in that same position, and that scholarship was gone. And I said, especially in this case here, if you like it, I would lock in on get your favorites to where you want to get. Talk to those schools, try to get to know them as best you possibly can. Build some relationships with the coaches, like talking to them, talk to some of the players. Ask, find the negatives, find out what was bad. I mean, one school was in a very cold part of the country. I was like, can you live in the cold? Do you want to live at the beach, or do you want to live where it's 40 inches of snow? Like, you gotta have to make those decisions about life changes. And he decided on Louisville through, going through the whole process and everything. And I was very happy for him. But anywhere he would have chosen, I would have been happy for him because it's his decision. So with it, because we had in the fall, we had like in the spring, I'm sorry, we had a virtual signing for all our athletes. Mm-hmm. And I said, look, I'm going to do everything in my power so we can have it in person. Just have it small, have it, less than, keep it. But I really want to do that because I felt like I missed that for 2020. Those kids didn't get a chance to have that. So we made it a point to have it, and we kept it small and we kept it spaced. But he was really appreciative of having that. Him and Redford were both very happy we got a chance to do that. So with it, I'm just hoping that the coaches will continue to check on those things, and that network is going to help us, that we got that available so people can watch games. And anything I know every coach in this group wants their kids to go somewhere and play and get an education. So I know we're all going to do what we can to help with it.
Scott, at Myers Park, the last few years you've pretty consistently had kids on your roster who have gone on to play in college. Guys like Zaylen Peeler, Caleb McCreed. John Ingram as well. And then there's that Drake May guy who probably could have played college basketball, but had another opportunity, so to speak. So what's the recruiting landscape been from your perspective out there in Charlotte and at Myers Park in general, and how has it kind of changed?
Yeah, it runs the gamut of the group, kind of like you're talking about. We've had Division II, Division III guys. We had our point guard last year who started for us for 2 years is at Fayetteville Tech, and kind of what LJ was talking about, the process of trying to figure out what that looked like for him. Finishing up a season last year that gets cut short, not really having an opportunity to get him in the gym and help him improve. All three of those guys that you mentioned, Zaylin and Caleb and John, all really kind of stepped it up even after their senior season, to be honest. And they had put out some good film, but most of those guys had to go on campus and play their way onto a team or play their way into some money. And missing out on the chance to be able to do that in March and April and be able to go on those visits with those guys was different with Cam. Cam's in a good place. My coaches, my assistants do an unbelievable job of staying connected with those guys and helping them ask the right questions. I think that with anything, whether it's Division I all the way down to trying to help a kid look at a JUCO, is making sure that they know the questions that they need to have answered when they're talking to coaches and understanding the relationship. And that's the one thing that probably hasn't changed. Even as Chris talked about, coaches are trying to figure out how to navigate Zoom, how to stay connected to kids, how to try to build that. They're making decisions that are significant for them going forward, and that's got to be based on a relationship of some level. Whether we have it with them to be able to help them navigate that, or it's coming from somewhere else, somebody else, whether it's a travel coach or family members that are helping them, is fine with me, as long as they're being guided into kind of that next relationship that's going to help them through the college experience. But it's definitely changed. I would say one thing, and we probably will get to it, is guys in college have more options to stay now. And so that 2021 class is in a different boat. We have a bunch of young kids. Our next wave are sophomores and freshmen here, and so we're a little bit lucky in that we kind of feel like we don't have anybody at Myers Park right now that's in that situation. But those 21 kids, if they do have offers and they have relationships and established relationships with coaches, really need to think about what that looks like, because college coaches have no idea what they're looking at for roster sizes going forward. Yeah. And it's going to be tough to kind of work through that and help those guys. And that's where, again, I guess I go back to making sure that they know what they need to ask. Sometimes it's not necessarily offered up, and you got to figure out how to get the questions answered that you need for yourself.
Yeah, you beat me to it. That was my next question. Kind of, good to hear about all your situations at your individual schools, but I do want to talk kind of more broadly. And roster spots was near the top of that list in terms of whether or not there's going to be guys in college at all levels taking extra years of eligibility. How that's going to affect scholarship numbers, what year zero situations might look like. And just how nobody really knows what their team is going to look like a year down the line at this point. So, what have kind of some of you heard from college coaches in your correspondence with them about how they're kind of approaching that situation? Depending on
you just mentioned, some of the college programs don't even know what their roster is going to look like. Because they don't know, they may be able to bring back some of these seniors. So there are a couple of huge things in play that are really new and totally change the landscape. So, of course, all of the current kids on college rosters have an additional year. So let's say you're out of school. So Division I schools have 13 scholarships. So let's say they have all 13 right now. Let's say they have 2 teams. And those seniors would be allowed to come back to their team next year. But they don't necessarily know that. If they will, if they won't. But another thing on top of all the pandemic payout is the thing that's likely happening of a one-time transfer will play right away. For that to come into college basketball is going to be a massive wave. And for that to come on along with all the COVID stuff is going to create just complete chaos in some ways and like roster volatility. I think most coaches may not know what they have, what they need. They're going to have the option to maybe fill what they need from an immediate play transfer from any level from any school. And I think that the roster volatility is going to be an issue for high school kids, potentially for years to come. With the transfer rule on top of the COVID.
Yeah, and LJ, in addition to that, it's not necessarily just this year's class, and we think in terms of this year's seniors, but at the college level, if all those kids have the option to get an extra year, this could be something that's affecting certain schools for multiple years, and some schools are going to be able to afford to keep kids. Like, let's say they say that, all right, these scholarships aren't going to count against your limit. Well, the school still has to fund them. So there's so many questions out there right now at the individual schools, and they're in the middle of their seasons now. And, it's really, really challenging for the 2021 kids because there's so many unanswered questions, and they all want to. A lot of them are afraid to commit to a school because what if I can play my way into a different school, and so it is definitely very challenging for the 2021 kids.
Kyle, I'd actually say that it might actually move quicker in some instances because there'll be some situations where college coaches maybe anticipate a kid staying and he changes his mind. Or for whatever reason, they work their way through and kind of encourage some guys that may be working towards graduate school that they don't want to play. I think we all kind of assume that, they're all going to want to choose to stay, or coaches are going to want to keep them. And in a lot of cases that's fair, but there'll be some situations where that doesn't necessarily happen. And those guys are going to be looking to fill spots. And again, that's where I say it's going to go back to relationship things. They're going to call and find out, hey, coach, who not just who do you have, but who have you played against? So kids are going to need to be willing when they do have opportunities to kind of work through that process, maybe even quicker than we would like. But at the same time, it gives them an opportunity to kind of fast forward that relationship, hopefully.
Yeah. The big impact on college sports of the pandemic has been on the economics. Basketball hasn't really been on the chopping block for schools that have had to cut programs, but have you heard anything about scholarship funding or athletic department funding that kind of might alter the way certain schools or programs kind of approach this? Or do you think, as far as at least the finances go on the college end, that it's going to be close enough to status quo?
I think that the bigger schools are going to have more money that they can push toward academics if they decide not to give the 13 scholarships.
Mm-hmm.
I personally think they're going to give more. I think they're going to probably go to maybe 18 scholarships for the next couple of years just to kind of get it to work out because of the kids that might decide to stay another year. And maybe some kids are just sitting out this year and not playing because they're just not sure. So I would say the schools that can afford it, I think, will definitely have more available, or they'll find monies academically to make it work. It's going to – I think just the numbers are just going to be crazy. It's weird. I'm more concerned with what's going to happen with 22. I think 21, is what it is, but I think 22, those kids, I think, are a little concerned about how it's all going to shake out with so many students being there. And then, as LJ said, the transfer portal. Can you imagine? I think it had over 1,000 names last year. So imagine with all this and the fact of transfer too. I mean, it's just not enough room for everybody to go where they want to go. So
yeah,
I'm with Coach Davis on the 22s. In the scenario I was kind of drawing where you go, that school that you're allowed 13 next year, if they have 2 students, they'd be allowed to return. And if the school they could have 15 for that 1 year, but then that next year it's going to go back to 13. So if they retain everyone for from this season. Then next year they have 15 guys on scholarship, and the following year they have to go back down to 13.
Yeah.
That school wouldn't have a scholarship for a 22. Now there's going to be a ton of volatility, but with the transfer portal, are they going to go with a high school kid, or are they going to go with maybe an older kid that's been in the college weight room? That's been so. I mean, I do think that, and again, it's not going to be every school, and I don't know. It's hard to say how impactful it'll be, but it will certainly impact past 21. I'm with you guys on that.
The transfer portal is another thing I want to touch on a little more because it's something that affects really every level. I mean, here, UNC and Duke aren't made up of transfers, but NC State is an ACC program that has had a significant number of transfers on its roster, kind of leading the way for them. So it's Power 5 schools, it's mid-majors, it's A10, it's SEC. No one's really immune to that. And if you're a kid, whether you're a low major prospect, a D2 prospect, a mid-major prospect, and you're 2021, and you're sitting right now and you can't go visit campuses in person, really. You can only talk to coaches over Zoom. They have limited updated film of you. That becomes a really tough decision when there's, you're not familiar with the town, the campus, the atmosphere, the weather, and you don't have any guarantees that your scholarship or roster spot's going to be there at a certain level. How much do all of those considerations kind of factor into the advice that you give kids?
Well, all my kids are in school right now. I've been really checking on them, texting them, calling them to see how things are going, because I want it to work where they're at. I mean, I think just trying to find something else is going to be tough. So I'd rather them, make it work where they're at, because they're very fortunate to have what they have. So as much as possible, hopefully they made a good decision of where they decide to go to school and play. But I think like you said, I think there was so many, and Kyle, I have to disagree with you a little bit. UNC the last couple of years have brought some transfer kids in, so they've done it. And imagine if you're at a big South school, and you're about, you're graduating, you got 1 year of eligibility left, and UNC is available.
Mm-hmm.
That's taking a spot. That's taking a spot from some kid that some high school kid that could go there. So if a big Power 5 school wants you, and you're from one of those mid majors, I mean, they might want that because it's an instant fix. And believe me, I've seen football coaches getting fired over, they having 8-game seasons and they're losing games because of this COVID stuff, or maybe the team, whatever situation is, and they're getting fired. So these college coaches are the same way. They want to put together a great product, and if it's got to be year to year, they may have to do that. But they like where they live, and they want to stay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Chris, that's a really good point about the graduate transfer stuff. That's changed a bunch in the last 4 years. And we've talked about Division I, but like you made the point, Kyle, it trickles all the way down. Really good Division IIs in this area that do a great job of finding kids that are transferring and can play at a whole lot of Division Is and beat a whole lot of Division Is. And the way their scholarships work, by not being fulls, have a significant effect on a lot of kids, like you talked about, the ones that we've had whose scholarships are made up of Pell Grant and academic assistance and all that kind of stuff. And the dollar amounts change literally depending on who else is on the roster. So if it's a graduate student or anything else, and that pot of money can shift really significantly. As much as we talk about it, the academics being in order and understanding what that looks like for Division II and Division III kids, it may not be as simple as a full ride. And is it going to be there? But can we actually afford this? Can I afford the loan that's going to be the end to put that over the line? And is it worth it? Is it worth the experience of what I want to do, or what I think I want to do, as opposed to just the simple yes or no, do I have a chance?
LJ or Brett, do you have thoughts on that?
I agree with the stuff that that has been said, and we would all love I think all of us appreciate loyalty, and we like guys to come to our program and stay for 4 years and go to college and play for 4 years, or 2 and 2 if they're in a junior college situation. But unfortunately, that's just not the way things are anymore. And and so sometimes, kids do have the opportunity to kind of play themselves into other situations. If they, if they're playing at a level and they're really good, they're going to get recruited, off of people's rosters. And guys that go to a higher level and don't get to play like they want to, they're going to end up transferring down. And so, LJ used the word a couple of times about roster volatility, and it's crazy now, and it's only going to get worse. And, it's just the times that we live in, and trying to help guide and navigate through all of that. And trying to make sure that you give the right advice to kids is important. And, one of the things that I've said, to our guys is, it's not, you can't look at it as I'm making the right mistake or the right choice or the wrong choice. It's not, it's not always that. You can make things successful in whichever direction you go. You've got to ultimately, at some point, you have to pull the trigger and make a decision, and you got to give it your best and make it work out. Like what Coach Davis was saying about, talking to his kids, make it work where you are. These kids may not end up right now where what their dream might have been, but they still have opportunities to play themselves into, maybe the situation they're in is really the best situation for them, or maybe they can play themselves into a different situation as well.
And with that, there's going to be, like take Chris Clemens from Millbrook, for example. What is it, third-time all-time leading scorer in college basketball? Probably could have had options while he was at Campbell to move, to stay there. But with him having to sit out a year, does that impact his desire to do that or not? I mean, certainly, Campbell has a great culture. It's a great spot for him. It's a great fit. But is it, certainly going to be way more attractive, way more tempting? Like Coach Queen said, we all do value loyalty, but we all have the human nature of it. We all dreams. So I think it's really going to be, I forget which coach said it, but it's going to make it really tough for maybe some of those low and mid-major schools. Because let's say they bring in a really good high school senior, and as a freshman, and the kid crushes it in the Big South Southern Conference, regionally for us, and he crushes it. That kid is going to have probably a lot of options from higher level spots, and or if a lower D1 program or even a D2 program develops the kid, and over a couple of years, and that kid transfers, and then on the receiving side, the school that's on the receiving side, if that receiving side school gets that kid after a freshman year, the one-time transfer, play right away, now that new school gets that kid for free. Where if you take the high school kid, you could lose them at any time. So we all value the loyalty. I think that it is one of the things. Rick Byrd, the longtime Belmont coach, was just inducted into the College Basketball Hall of Fame, and he was on the radio last week, and I loved what he said. They asked him about his recruiting over time, and he said, we got to the point once we started winning, we were established, that we really tried to recruit kids. We were slow to offer, but we tried to recruit kids that would be happy at Belmont if there was no basketball. If they'd be happy here academically, socially, geographically, and the things that Coach Queen and Coach Davis and Coach Taylor are talking about, like, is it a fit for you? I think that they took that as a staff at Belmont. Should our players think more of that than just the basketball opportunity? Because with all the roster volatility, you could get recruited over a lot easier too now. Those coaches, somebody mentioned coaches need to win. I mean, they could, a new coach comes in, or even the same coach may have some relationships, and you just never know. So you better really evaluate the total college experience at wherever you're choosing to go, and not be so tunneled in on basketball, because that your basketball landscape could change even with that own school. So.
Scott and Brett, I know you guys are really involved with the NCBCA, and the camps that they put on in June where college coaches can come. What is that like normally, and what was kind of the effect of not being able to hold that this year?
I'll let you go ahead.
So it's a great opportunity for us. Number one, for high school coaches to have the chance to be involved in kind of the experience and the opportunity to be involved in the summer recruiting was a huge win in my book. Just to be able to do it, to be invested in it to that degree, and then that's not to say that the travel ball stuff doesn't provide great opportunities. In a lot of ways, I think that we have to figure out more opportunities to do that together. And the NCAA did that intentionally by giving us some scholastic weekends and then building off of it. And so we hosted when we were able to do that 2 summers ago. It was really cool to see all the teams across the state come in here. It was really cool to see high school coaches that were that cared that much to put time into it in the summertime. And I know that was one of the initial changes was the NCAA trying to figure out how to maintain some scholastic weekends in August and September, which was going to be difficult. At that point in a school year, we're not allowed to play outside of we're not allowed to play outside of competition. And so that was going to be a tough situation to navigate for North Carolina schools. Obviously, unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. But hopefully that's something that comes back to where we can continue to try to build that, use that as a springboard for our kids into their summer seasons. Those guys, put them on a platform to be able to do great things, and having them with their high school just gives them a different perspective, shows them a different kind of player, maybe shows them as a little bit different kid when they're around kids at their high school and in a different environment. And as a college coach, obviously everything that we've just been talking about, you want to be able to make the best decision possible. And to do that, you need to know as much information as you can. And so, again, seeing them with their high school just allows more to be presented. And so, I appreciate the NCBCA doing that and working so diligently to try to give us the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, we were really excited to have the opportunity to be able to do it. And that first time you're doing something, you never know how it's going to work. And we decided to do one individual kind of day and then one team camp. We had made the decision that this year we were going to do 2 team camps, and we were going to build in one individual session in each of the team camps. We wanted to try to give more high school teams an opportunity to be able to come. One of the things that we did was we've been working with, the private schools and the public schools can't play together at those events, but we've been working with the private school group to make sure we were doing things in the same geographical part of the state. When we were at Davie County, they were at Greensboro Day. And so coaches could come in that weekend and go back and forth. And I went over to Greensboro Day to watch a couple of games one night. And, there were coaches there that then were there the next morning at our thing at Davie County going back and forth. And then when the private schools were in Charlotte, we were at Queens and Myers Park doing the stuff down there. And we've talked about between Greensboro, Charlotte, and Raleigh, doing it in 2 of those 3 places each year and rotating it around, but always being in the same place with the private schools so that, we're making it easy for the college coaches to be able to see our kids instead of trying to compete against each other for that. And so, it was a very positive experience. We got really positive feedback from the college coaches. I think they appreciated how organized things were, and that the information that they were getting was accurate. And we put a lot of time and effort into giving them something, and they weren't having to pay a whole lot of money for it either. And so I think anything that drives part of the recruiting process back to the high school coaches and the high school teams, I think is a positive thing. And so it was obviously disappointing that we couldn't do that this summer. We knew that we weren't going to be able to do it early on, when things started getting canceled. But, I have, every reason to believe that that's something that we will continue to do and continue to grow as much as we can so that we can get as many of our teams that have, college level athletes at all levels, the opportunity to play in front of coaches. Obviously, this first time it was very geared toward teams that had Division I players because we were limited in the number of teams that we could have. But, that's part of the reason we wanted to expand it to 2 different team camp weekends. And, hopefully, we'll be able to do that next summer, but whenever the colleges can be back out recruiting, I know the NCBCA will put those events on again.
I would be remiss to say, Kyle, on that, we're talking about kids that have our opportunity to go play college, but one of the fun parts for me as a high school coach was watching some of our kids that were not college kids, and they knew it, having the chance to play in front of college coaches. Luckily we were able to do it in our gym, but they got to have an experience that, some of those kids, whether they try to play travel ball or aren't necessarily in events and places where those guys are coming to watch anyway. And you walk in to play our game against Millbrook or whatever, and there's 20 coaches sitting in there. That's a cool thing for a kid that's a junior or senior that's not going to be playing at the next level. And, as high school teachers and educators, hope, we are all focused on the experience that we're giving all of our kids. And that's a cool thing. And so that shouldn't be lost on the fact that, we're giving a platform to our college ready athletes, but doing something like that's maybe an unintended consequence, but it was a cool thing. And those guys appreciate that.
Yeah, and I just like to just chime in on that. We're lucky as high school basketball coaches, and we're involved in the process of our players' recruitment. I mean, outside of football and basketball, it just is what it is. But almost exclusively, the recruiting is done through club sport. So we're thankful that we have the chance that the basketball world, whatever you want to say, that they do involve the high school coach. Mm-hmm. And events, like Myers Park did an awesome job hosting, Queens too. That was a really neat thing last 2 summers ago, I guess. And the NCBCA did a fantastic job. Got to give Greg Grantham a shout out. I mean, and Coach Queen and Coach Taylor and all the guys behind the scenes making that happen. I mean, that is a really powerful thing for the kids in our state. And so I just want to put that out that those guys did a great job with that. And I'm not saying this just to get an invite back, although we'd love to have one, but they did a really good job with it.
Hey, LJ, I'm sorry to jump in as the host there, Kyle, but I'm interested to know, are you worried about that potentially moving away from high school coaches like you talk about it has with other club levels? Do you think that maybe the situation with COVID is an accelerant and has a bigger impact on that later on down the line?
I think that the non-basketball football recruiting has shifted away from high schools for a long time.
Right.
Or they haven't a long time. So I do not think it'll change. I do think that part of a couple of you guys mentioned, information, right? And I was actually talking to a buddy the other day, and he said, we all want to make informed decisions, but in order to make an informed decision, you need information. And right now in this COVID world, we don't have as much complete full information. But what we do have are pre-existing relationships. And a lot of those college coaches are going to probably lean on people that they know because they're not going to be able to see. They haven't seen kids live since maybe last February or maybe the early part of March. Who knows when they'll be able to get to see them live again? They're going off of film. They barely see their jersey number, unless you're like at Millbrook and you got like 17 different jersey colors with huge numbers everywhere. But, I just don't. I think that the high school coach will continue to be involved. I think it's just kind of part of the culture of basketball. I think basketball in general, and college coaches value the academic component. I mean, these kids, they value the high school coach's opinion, and I think it will stay. And I'm thankful it is because I've recently started coaching girls lacrosse. My daughter plays, and it's my 4th year. I'm actually wearing the sweatshirt now. We got a chance maybe to win the conference this year. We're pretty excited. But we had our first Division I lacrosse girl this time, and every sport is so different with recruiting. And I had reached out and talked to several of Jordan Ellerson, by the way, he's going along with. But I reached out to a couple college coaches for her, and the responses I got from the college coaches were unbelievable. They were like, "Oh my gosh, like you're the high school coach, and you care about the recruiting?" And I'm like, "I'm coach basketball. Like that's just kind of how it is." And it's interesting if this would be a tweak with recruiting at some point, in that, like with girls lacrosse, these girls are strongly encouraged to send their own film out, to make their own connections with college programs. And in basketball, I was fortunate to coach. I was 7 years as an assistant in college, and if a kid emailed me, if a parent emailed me or called, I'd be like, that kid can't play. What they do with Call of Duty. Like, if you could play, we probably know about you a little bit by now. But so it'd be interesting to see if at some point there's a shift there where a little bit more of the exposure or ownership of the initiation of the recruiting process goes maybe from the student athlete. But I don't know that's going to happen real soon, because honestly, I think these college coaches are so buried in figuring out their game schedules and figuring out what this transfer portal thing's going to be like this spring. The younger kids, the 22s have been unseen. The 22s are unseen. They have no idea what they're even going to be able to have to offer them. The 23s normally might be getting on some radars. I think they're so far down the list in terms of priorities at this point. So I think those relationships, back to the information and the previous relationships and the contacts, I think kind of old school word of mouth is going to be a big thing. And I think the high school coaches will be a part of that.
Scott is reading my mind here, because that was where I was going next. Chris, you had a pretty extensive background in AAU and travel ball. Scott, I know you have an assistant that does as well. You mentioned it with football. If football and basketball are the sports where the high school coach is involved in recruiting. Basketball is kind of 50-50. Football, there's no AAU, so it's what is that dynamic, Chris, as someone that's been on both sides of that dynamic? What is it kind of like, and how have you noticed maybe it's changed a little bit? Scott mentioned possibly this being an accelerant. Have you noticed that at all from a little bit more of a reliance on the AAU side of things?
Yeah, I think it's kind of one of those things where in my world, when I coach travel, one of the biggest things I tried to do was I tried to get to know every kid I had on my team and how they were doing academically. So when I spoke to a coach, I wanted to be able to tell them how the kid was doing. And I think that's the biggest drawback to the travel, is that the coaches don't know the kids' grade situation. Mm-hmm. Being a coach and being a faculty member, a teacher, a mentor on a campus, you're able to tell that coach honestly what you see. If you see that kid every day, you're able to tell him if he's late to class, if he's late to practice, if he or she is doing things that you're not exactly happy with. I mean, you can be honest about it because you know them, instead of it being a situation where you only see them at practice. And that was the thing with my travel teams. I knew of the kids. I didn't know the kids. My high school kids, I know. I see them every day. I know them. I know if a teacher tells me a kid is doing a certain thing, I know if he did it or not. It's one of those situations that you spend the time, you invest the time in them, so you know them that well. And some coaches are really big on that. They're big on a relationship, because they want to know that when they go to bed at night, they can trust that kid's going to be where they're supposed to be. And with the travel, no disrespect to anybody's travel situation, do you really know who you have? Now, if you've been a part of a program for a number of years, you're part of the organization, they probably know you really well. But if you're a kid that plays on different teams, different groups, it's kind of hard to say that you know a kid and he's playing for you this week, and he's playing for Scott for his travel team the next week, and then he's with LJ's team 2 weeks from now, and then he decides to move to Wilmington and hang out in the summertime and play with Brett's team. How can Brett talk about that kid when he's only had him for a week in the gym and he's played for him? So that's the relationships we build with our student athletes, I think, is huge for what the coaches need. Now, they got to recruit who they recruit. And if you're a top 10, top 20, top 50 kid, I don't know if they even care that the relationship's there. But if you're at a good situation at school, a high academic school, a school that's going to need some references from some faculty members, going to need a writing sample, things of that nature, they're going to want to talk to people that know the people.
I think that our role as high school coaches, partly in that, is really no different than the college recruiting part, in trying to help guide our guys to places that are good fit for them. Not all travel situations are great for certain kids, and that's not a disrespect to any of the travel organizations that are trying to provide a platform for them. But you want them in a situation where they're going to be able to, showcase their skills to the right schools, be coached, be organized and diligent, because it's no different than us trying to help our kids. You want those guys on that side, like, Chris says he knew of his guys. He knew them in a different way. Like you may not have known him like a teacher knows a kid in class, but you still knew the kid. It just was a different perspective, which is still valuable and truly extremely valuable. So, my kind of role in that is helping kids, again, try to find the right situation for them to be seen by the right schools, in the right places, with the right people that can be there to help them kind of put together the right plan, go forward.
Scott and LJ, you both have experience, on college staffs. All of you get to advise kids and be, authority figures to kids, and a situation of great adversity like this, that's a huge role. If you were still in a college role, what advice would you be giving to kids who are kind of, on the brink of having a college opportunity to, those 22s and 23s that aren't getting seen live? What advice would you give them to give themselves the best chance to do that?
I'm not sure. Go ahead, LJ. What's off the top of your head?
I mean, I think honestly, if you're a 21, so if you're a 21 right now, and let's just talk Division I. If you're 21 Division I, you desire it, and you didn't sign in November, and you're not committed right now, I would say to think that your offers are going to get better than they are right now would be fantasy land. Okay, the coaches are not going to get to see you. They're going to have the transfers once come right in, play right away. I mean, I think it's going to be tough, unfortunately. So I would either, if you have options on the table, I would probably take one that you like, or maybe go, if you really think you're a Division I player, go to a Division II school and crush it. I'm sure there's Division coaches out there all over the place that would love to take you, come in, be an all-conference guy for a year and help you get to Division I. I bet that. Same goes to Division I. Maybe a Division I kid's out there and he wants to play whatever, ACC or whatever. Okay, fine. Go to the Big South. Go be the player of the year in the league as a freshman. If you do that, you'll be able to play in the ACC. I about guarantee you that. So I think some of that was 21. 22, I think it's going to be hard for 22. I really do. I think my advice to the 22 is you got to get good. I mean, you got to get good. If you're a national recruit, if you're a top 100 player, top 150, 200 player, or whatever, nationally, you're fine. I mean, you're going to be fine. There'll be plenty of spots for you. If you're not, again, you're going to be competing against college players. So I think if I was a 2022, and again, I think Caleb Davis too, mentor the kids, as kids, you've got to understand, you've got to listen to people that have your best interest in mind, but they're going to tell you the truth, right? Like so many people, and I'm not going to say AU coaches, college coaches, high school coaches, so many coaches, or family members. Are they really telling you the truth? We talk about humility a lot in our program, knowing who you are. Do you have people in your life that are going to sit down and tell you, this is where you're at? Can you understand where you're at? And then you can make quality decisions. But with 22s, if you're not in that, you got to get good. Okay, you got to get good, and then I think you have to start to prepare for maybe I'm not going to be able to play at the level my dreams D1. That might be it's going to be probably a little tighter for you to have a reset your dream to get better. Beyond that, 23, I think this thing, assuming that we get to some level of normalcy, next fall, next school year, I think it'll probably level out by 23. I think those kids will be more. It'll be more of a back traditional, but that would be my advice. My advice to 22s would be get you got to put in time. And really for the 23s, the younger kids is just you got to get great. You got to understand that your level, the pool of people you're competing with is going to get a little tighter. So if you get serious about it, you got to get to work.
LJ said a lot of really exactly right. From a college coach perspective, and so we have a 22 that we've actually begun that conversation with now, LJ, and you're right. One of the hardest things we tell guys, and I told them this when I was recruiting them at 16, 17, 18, one of the hardest things is to figure out who you trust and try to filter through all that. And that's a hard thing to ask of adults, much less kids. But in this situation, they have to figure out, all right, this person has my best interest at heart. They're gonna help me be able to understand what I need to figure out. And on the college side, you hope that those guys are being transparent and having those same things on their end. We talked about offering scholarships and then, those going away later. We would tell a kid, if we really wanted a kid, we would say, look, we really, really want you, but I can't lose B and C because I'm waiting on you. So I don't have a deadline, but understand if I think I'm getting ready to lose my next kid, I'm going to tell you that, and I'm going to need you to know then. And so you hope that the college coaches, as they work their way through it, and it's going to change. But you hope that they have a relationship enough with the kid, at least in a situation that's moved down the road enough to be having those conversations, that they're being honest with them and telling them, look, our situation has changed. We had a kid that's going to stay now. We don't have this one. We think this might be good for you, maybe not. But again, we said it an hour ago, it's coming back to the relationship that you have with them. And that's our job on our end, is help our kids figure out what those relationships look like with the college coaches. So if I'm a college coach on that end and I'm recruiting them and I genuinely care about them, you try to say the same thing. And although it feels a little odd to say it, I almost would say, be patient, do the work. Like they said, do the work to be good. Do the work so there's no questions about that. Do the work academically. Know what your situation is financially. Be good enough that you answer all those questions to be a player in our program. And then trust that when the time is right, we'll be able to figure that out. But yeah, also being willing to know that there's no set answer right now. There's no black and white. It's gray.
Yeah, no, I love all that. I think that's all spot on. And the patience thing, I think, is big. And we've been lucky that, like, the guys, we've had some of our Division I guys have been with Garner Road in Raleigh, and I think they've gotten great advice, truth from them. So like you mentioned, like, surround yourself with people with really not what you want to hear, but what you need to hear. I think it's huge. So I agree.
Yeah, there's a lot of voices in these kids' ears, and at a time of great uncertainty, it's really important that they be able to filter out who to trust and where things really stand, and that's I think great advice. We have gone over an hour. I know you guys have all had some long days. I know Chris has a tryout to get to and oversee with his wonderful program over there.
My kids probably think that I'm too cool to come to practice.
Yeah, you're pulling some sort of mind games on them or something.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, put that tryout on the network. Put that tryout on the network so we get a look and see what's going on.
My camera's not working today. It's off
today. Coach Davis, after your guys go to college, okay, with having Evan Moesta, I mean, do those guys have this like major letdown from their Twitter experience and social media when they get to college? Like, do you have to do some like emotional counseling with these guys?
No, what he does is
he don't have Evan anymore. I mean,
he hypes them up when they're in college as well, so they still get the love. So our kids had 26 today in a game, and
no, but the graphics, man, the graphics.
Hey, luckily for us, we have him, but he's a unicorn, man. I kind of want. Some days I look up and I think he's gonna vanish. So it's like I just take it, I keep it, and I'm just thankful every day we got him around for sure.
All right. Well, thank you guys once again so much for your time. Best of luck with this season, and hopefully everyone stays safe and healthy. And I know at HighSchoolOT we're really excited to get out across the state and get to your games again. Thank you everyone for watching. This has been another.
Kyle, if I could just give you guys a quick shout out too. I know like the Wilmington Star News does a fantastic job in Wilmington, and Brett is very fortunate for that. And I think it's awesome. In Raleigh, we've done kind of, it is what it is in the Triangle. We're the print media is gone. I mean, I grew up here, and I mean, we had we had multiple big papers. We had all the regional small papers around town. Yeah. I'm not quite as familiar how it is in Charlotte right now, but I just wanted to give you guys at HighSchoolOT a shout out at WRL for thank you for doing everything you do for our community. I mean, there's a need, and it's greatly valued, and by obviously all the kids, but the parents, and so I also thank you guys for doing everything you guys do. I remember Nick and whatever it was, 2006 or whatever, or 7 or 8, when he was kind of starting to get this thing going, and you guys do a fantastic job, and I know that a lot of people are very appreciative of that. So
for sure, we echo that, and we're looking forward. I know you got realignment coverage tomorrow, so
Yeah, you all might have some different worlds when you wake up tomorrow.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, Nick has been at it a while. We really appreciate that. Thank you, LJ. This has been another edition of the High School OT webinar series presented by Bojangles. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And once again, thank you guys so much for your time.
Thanks.